and welcome to 7D, Polynomial Long Division. Today we're going to start off by looking at how to divide a polynomial by a monomial. Remember, a polynomial is a phrase that has multiple terms, whereas a monomial is a single term. So when we divide a polynomial by a monomial, what we do is we divide each term of the polynomial by the monomial. So here we would divide a by c, and we would divide b by c. So that my answer would be a over c plus b over c. And remember, c cannot be 0 because we cannot divide anything by 0. So let's look at an example. Down here, I've got 5a cubed b to the fourth minus 8a squared b cubed plus ab squared minus 8b. And I want to divide all of that by ab squared. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this as multiple fractions. So I'm going to start off by looking at 5a cubed b to the fourth divided by ab squared minus 8a squared b cubed divided by ab squared plus ab squared divided by ab squared minus 8b divided by ab squared. When we do this now, we go through and we can cancel things. So looking at this, the 5 just stays as it is in this first piece, but a cubed over a, that cancels, making that a 2, so I get a squared. And b to the fourth over b squared, we do minus 2, so I get b squared. Minus the 8 here just trickles down because there's nothing to divide with, but a squared divided by a, that would cancel, leave me with just an a. B cubed over b squared, well, that's going to get rid of all but one of the b's. Plus, a over a cancels, b squared over b squared cancels, so I'm left with a 1 because I end up with 1 over 1. Minus, here the 8 can't do anything, the over a can't do anything, and this b cancels with that b, leaving just a b in the denominator. So that's my final answer, 5a squared b squared minus 8ab plus 1 minus 8 over ab. All right, guys, it's your turn now. I want you now to divide 3x to the fifth minus 21x cubed plus 15x by 3x. And remember, what that's going to look like as a fraction is 3x to the fifth minus 21x cubed plus 15x over 3x. So pause your video now and do that. All right, friends, now let's do a quick revision of how we would do long division without a calculator. Well, if I have 529, I want to divide it by 22. Remember, I start off by setting it up. 529, and I divide it by 22. And I start off by asking myself, can 22 go into 5? Well, no, it cannot. But can 22 go into 52? Yes, it can. It can go in twice. So then I multiply 22 times 2 to get 44. And then I subtract. I borrow over here to get a 12. 12 minus 4 is 8, and everything else went away. Then we drop down the 9 so that the 9 is now here. And we ask ourselves again, how many times does 22 go into 89? Well, 22 goes into 89 4 times. Okay, well, I now do 22 times 4, which gets me 88. Right? We subtract, I get a 1. So I end up with a remainder equals 1, and my answer is 24. Now, the steps we did to do that, we always start off by dividing. How many times does our divisor go into the thing being divided? And then we multiply, right? We multiplied the divisor by the number of times it would end to get 44. Then we subtracted. We then dropped down what's left over. Or I'm just saying drop down, sorry. We're going to drop down. Then we repeat that process until we can't go any further. Well, the same thing is going to happen when we look at polynomial long division. Polynomial long division works the same way, except you always have to first rearrange your terms in descending order, and you need to use placeholders for missing terms. For example, with the term x squared plus 3, I don't have an x term, so I would write x squared plus 0x for my placeholder plus 3. After that, we are going to divide the very first term by the divisor. Then we multiply the entire divisor by whatever we got when we divided and write the result below the dividend. And then we're going to line up our like terms. At that point, we subtract, or also known as adding opposites. Then we drop down our remaining terms. And then we divide the first term in the remainder by the first term in the divisor and repeat steps 3 to 6. So let's look at some examples of this. My first example, I've got 19x minus 21 plus 12x squared over 4x minus 3. We need to first put this in descending order. My numerator is not in descending order. So I'm going to rewrite that as 12x squared, I do have an x term, plus 19x minus 21. And I want to divide all of that by 4x minus 3. So what I do now is I ask myself, what would I have to multiply 4x by to make it 12x squared? Or if I divided 12x squared by 4x, what would I get? The answer is 3x, because 3x times 4x gets me 12x squared. All right, now I'm going to take this and I'm going to multiply everything in my divisor by this number. So 4x times 3x is 12x squared. And then 3x times negative 3 is minus 9x. All right, that's my second step. Now I'm going to subtract. I send a negative through everything. 12x squared minus 12x just gets me 0. That goes away. 19x plus 9x gets me 28x. Okay. Now we're going to carry down the minus 21. And then we repeat the process all over again. I ask myself, how many times does 4x go into 28x? Well, 4x goes into 28x 7 times, so I put plus 7. Now we're going to multiply, right? 7 times 4x is 28x, which is what I want. And then 7 times negative 3 is minus 21. Then we're going to now subtract, add. When I do that, 28x minus 28x gets me 0. Negative 21 plus 21 gets me 0. So I get a remainder of 0. So my answer is 3x plus 7. All right, it's your turn now. I want you guys now to try this one. Go ahead and give it your best shot. Now let's look at another example. This time we've got some missing terms, so we're going to have to use placeholders. For 2y squared plus 4, we're missing the single y term. So when I rewrite this, I'm going to rewrite it as 2y squared plus 0y plus 4. And we're going to divide that by 2y minus 8. So just like before, I ask myself, what number could I multiply 2y by to get 2y squared? Well, the answer is y. Or if I divided 2y squared by 2y, I'd get y. Now we're going to multiply. Y times 2y is 2y squared. Y times negative 8 is negative 8y. Okay, now we're going to subtract. I'm going to send a negative through this. The 2y squared and the negative 2y cancel. 0y and 8y is just 8y. Okay, now we're going to drop down our next term. That plus 4 comes down here as plus 4. Okay, we then go back and repeat the process. What would I have to multiply 2y by to get 8y? That would be 4 plus 4. 2y times 4 is 8y. Negative 8 times 4 is negative 32. And now we're going to subtract. I send a negative through this. The 8y's cancel, and here I get 36. I can't multiply 2y by anything to get to 36, so I'm left with a remainder. And the way we deal with our remainder is we would say my answer is y plus 4 plus what's left over, 36 divided by 2y minus 8. That is how I would list my answer, because what's left over is still some division that we weren't able to do. That's the remainder. All right, let's look at the next problem. Here, we're going to set it up, and when we set it up, this time we had a missing term in our divisor, so I had to put in the 0c. Now, in order to get c squared to look like c cubed, I have to put a c here. Then we multiply this by everything in the next. So I go through and I multiply, and remember, c times 0c is 0c squared. Then we subtract. We send a negative through everything, and we get, those cancel. I get 3c squared minus 7c. Then we drop down the 21 plus 21, and we repeat the process all over again. What do I multiply c squared by to get 3c squared? The answer is plus 3. So then we multiply it, and we subtract, so we send the negative through. I get negative 7c plus 6. Well, I can't get c squared to go into that. It won't work. So at the end of the day, my answer is just c plus 3 plus my remainder of negative 7c plus 6 over c squared plus 5. That's my final answer. All right. Now let's take a look at some synthetic division. When we don't have a number in front of the first x, and we're just dividing by something like x minus c, we can use something called synthetic division, which allows us to divide really, really quickly, and it's an easy setup. The way I do synthetic division is I take whatever number is here, and I take the opposite of that number, in this case, 5. Then I look at the terms over here, and I need to put in place values if I don't have my descending order with every single term represented, but right now I've got all my place values. So I put just the coefficient. I've got a 3, I've got a negative 13 in front of the x squared, a negative 4 in front of the x, and a plus 2 as my last term. And I'm going to draw a bar down here. And my first step is always to drop down the first piece, the 3. Then I'm going to multiply the 5 times 3. So I do 5 times 3, which makes this 15. And then we're going to add straight down. I add negative 13 plus 15 is positive 2. Then we multiply right here. I'm going to do 5 times 2, which gets me 10. And then again, we're going to add. Negative 4 plus 10 is 6. And we're going to multiply right here, the 5 times 6 to get 30. And we're going to add straight down to get me 32. The last piece is always my remainder. And then what's left over here are the coefficients of my answer. And the coefficients, if I start with an x cubed, then this guy here is going to be x squared. We start one term lower. And so then if this guy was squared, he'd be x. If he was x, he'd be my number. So my answer is 3x squared plus 2x plus 6 plus my remainder over the divisor, which is 5. Okay? All right. Let's take a look. I want you guys now to try this one on your own. Take a look at it. And we're going to have a second video that picks up right here. So please be aware there is a second video. Thank you very much.